Hi friends, this is Tiina and welcome to my new video. In this video, we are setting up my new February theme for my bullet journal and I'm super excited to show this to you and hear what you think about it. So my theme for February is pastel skies and clouds. I used a lot of pastel pinks, purples and blues, so this color scheme was so far from my comfort zone. If you know me, I usually gravitate towards neutral and earthy tones, but it's so fun to sometimes go for something completely different too, and that's what I did here. Also, something I haven't done in a long time is making a full cover spread, and I just decided to do it this time. But talking about my cover page, let's start with that. I started off by refining my existing sketch a bit. I wanted to paint the sky light pink and make the clouds on the bottom super fluffy. I didn't want to stress myself trying to make realistic clouds this time. I know that takes a lot of time and honestly, I don't know if my skills are there yet. I remember back in November 2020 when I made a night sky theme, I was able to paint really realistic looking clouds, but I think it takes a little bit of practice to get there again after a long break. And I also just didn't have the time or effort to practice off camera. Clouds, in my opinion, are some of the hardest things to paint, but choosing this more cartoony style isn't too hard at all. I just taped off the sides of the painting and mixed this light pink color. I first wanted to be more purple, but this worked well too, and I made some of my other spreads purple instead. I started out my paintings by painting the background first. I think this helped me to refine the edges of the clouds too, and it was also easier to then paint them afterwards. I then took my big rounded flat brush and started adding color for the whole sky. I sometimes really struggle filling a big area with gouache and have it even. I feel like sometimes the color just gets super transparent and uneven. It happened this time too, but to be honest, I just left it like that and didn't really care about it too much. I think letting go of that perfectionistic mindset is, well, first of all, really hard sometimes, but also really rewarding and also shows some kindness towards ourselves. I tried to create this light ombre effect by adding darker pink color to the upper part of the sky and then went over it again with the lighter color. I went over this part quite many times, but nothing bled through, the paper just wrinkled a little bit. After the sky part of the painting was done, I went to paint the actual clouds. I wanted to have the same pink tone to them as the sky, but obviously a lot lighter. I had a super easy technique for these clouds and I would say it's pretty beginner level even if it looks harder. So I just took white gouache and mixed a tiny bit of the same color I used for the sky to create this super light pink to add to the upper part of each cloud, to the rounded edge of the cloud. Then I mixed some black and pink to the sky color and made the tone for the more shadowy lower part of each cloud. I tried to add the lighter color first and then the darker, and with a bit of water I blended the colors together. I wanted to make sure I wouldn't add way too much of the darker color, so sometimes I just went over the darker area with the lighter tone. I used gouache throughout this theme and I will include all the shades in the description along with all my socials and discount codes. I was happy to use gouache again after my watercolor theme for January, and going back to my comfort zone, at least in one way, was really nice. I also only use 4 different brushes making this theme, so it doesn't take many different art supplies to create this theme. Many of you always ask me what my inspiration behind my themes are or how do I choose a theme, and it's often about the season we are in. February is sometimes a hard month to find a theme for, at least for me. It's a winter month for me, but after 2 more wintry themes, I'm usually ready to go forward into something a bit different. Back in December, when I made a poll on Instagram asking what theme I should do for January, I had winter villages and pastel clouds as options. Then winter villages won, so I decided I would make the clouds for February, and I think that turned out to be a good choice. Clouds are such a versatile theme, so it really goes perfectly with pretty much all seasons. If you like more darker tones, you could absolutely just choose a darker blue color and make a full-on night sky theme with clouds as well. By the way, if you want to see how I made my November 2020 theme with darker tones and galaxies too, definitely go check out my Instagram account Tiina's Diary and just scroll down a lot to find those. The shadows on the left page clouds turned out to be a little bit lighter and more purple in tone after I noticed I accidentally made the shadows too harsh on the right side. If you want to make the clouds be more dramatic, definitely make the shadows darker, but if you want that dreamy and soft look to your clouds, go with lighter shadows. I wanted to add quite many different clouds in the cover page so the whole spread would look more full and dreamy. To save time, you could absolutely add less clouds or just make them a lot bigger and closer to you. This theme actually didn't take that long to make. The cover page took maybe like 3 hours, which for me isn't that much considering that this is a full spread cover, but I know not all of you have that kind of time on your hands, so making this just one page could be a good choice too. When the clouds or sky were done, I painted the crescent moon on the right page. I totally forgot to press record when making the moon first with a white acrylograph and a circle template, but I made the color whiter with the white gouache and a small brush and then added some small white dots across the sky to create some stars in the background. After that, I removed the tape and created the February header on the upper left side of the spread. I again used the same font I used last month. It was inspired by Therese T's January setup lettering. I will link their channel in the description and you should definitely go check it out. My first idea was to fill them in, but I ended up liking this look more and left it like this. I also accidentally got some paint to the edges of the spread too and just fixed those spots with my white Gelly Roll pen. I would love to say this only happened on the spread, but I ended up messing up so many of my spreads after this too. I really love how this spread turned out and I'm super happy with it, but let's set up my calendar spread next. This layout is inspired by another amazing artist, Hannah Maria Plans, who has so many beautiful bullet journal themes and layout ideas. I will link her account down in the description too. I always make super minimalistic calendar layouts, and the last time I made an individual box layout for my calendar was for the beginning of 2020, so I thought why not try it out again. I taped the boxes from the top row of my calendar to paint this long horizontal painting on the top of the spread. I chose a light blue color scheme for this painting this time. First, the color I mixed turned out to be a little bit dirtier and greener in tone than I would have wanted, so I tried to mix a more cleaner shade of blue after and painted the whole sky with it. I really love making horizontal paintings on my calendar spreads. For some reason, I always gravitate towards those layouts and it worked great here as well. Another great layout idea would be making a long vertical painting on the side of the spread and making the boxes I'm doing later below the calendar. I took a small detail brush and gouache and splattered some white paint on top of the sky and added some individual small dots as stars. I made the clouds a bit smaller and further away this time, and again I did the same thing, mixed the sky color to a white gouache and painted the top of the clouds with it and chose a more darker tone for the bottom. The shadow color really doesn't need to be that dark at all. I just mixed some black to the blue tone to get this warmer gray tone. I didn't want to just add gray color because many times it turns out really cool toned and dark by accident, and the warmth of a color can really affect how the whole painting looks. A good thing to remember when painting clouds is also to make the little rounded shapes on top different sized. If you make them all same size and shape, they're going to look even more cartoony. Choosing to add more variety usually makes it look more balanced and a tiny bit more realistic, even if you're not aiming for that super realistic look. Obviously, also sketching some things beforehand helps with that, so you don't have to just make it up as you go, but it really depends on you too. I know some people don't like spending time on sketching, but I couldn't live without that part. I always love making pretty detailed sketches before going in with paints. I didn't use any reference pictures for any of my paintings this month. I just chose a color scheme and a different perspective for each painting and went with those. I use the same techniques for every single painting, but doing different sized and shaped paintings. Changing the size of the clouds and choosing different colors makes each spread look different and interesting without needing to do much extra. Lastly, I painted this white moon to the right side, and that's my painting all done. This one took less than 2 hours, and that's quite different from how long my paintings usually take, so I'm always happy to not spend hours and hours on one painting. This was a fun painting to make as well. By the way, here's a good tip if you're ever painting, especially with gouache, straight to the edge of your paper in your notebook. Tape the edge of the paper on the other side of your paper so when you're adding color, it won't bleed to the other side. I did it here, but still for some reason in one of my other spreads I didn't, and now I have paint all over the page. Next, I was working on the calendar boxes. I first chose a 0.8 size thick Pigma Micron to make the boxes, but after making 2 of them, it just looked way too thick for me and I went for a lot smaller 0.2 size fine liner instead. Later, I took a piece of my Archer and Olive Neapolitan notepad and glued boxes with thinner outlines on top. You can still see some of the thicker outlines below, but I think it looks a little bit better at least. It doesn't need to be perfect. I seriously wish I would have made the header below the painting, but for some reason I thought it would look good drawn on kind of half on the painting and half below, and it wasn't so easy to fix, so I just let it be like this, even though I don't really like it too much. I drew circles with an Archer and Olive acrylic graph to each box and wrote the dates on top. I made little sections for notes and focus on the left side of the page. I loved how Hannah had made these colorful lines for her boxes in the calendar layout I got inspired by, so I did the same and actually ended up doing this in many of my other spreads too. So I took my gouache and mixed a lot of water into the blue paint I used before to make this super transparent, almost watercolor-like blue to paint lines on every other dot space below the headers. I really liked this look. It was easy and fast to make, and it was a simple way to add more color to the spread. I also just covered this accidental small paint splatter I had made in the lower right corner, and then I went to my tracker spread. If you watch my January Plan With Me video, you know that I use this exact same layout there too, but I chose to use the same one for the next month as well, just because it worked for me well and I couldn't come up with a new one. Also, I want to say it's completely okay and normal if one of your spreads ends up staying empty or you don't have the motivation or inspiration to use your weeklies or tracker spreads sometimes. Our journals are there to help us stay productive and plan ahead, but when your journal becomes one of the tasks for each day, maybe take a little break or try to find a different way or try something new that inspires you to use it more. Don't feel bad for not journaling or filling your notebook each day. I certainly don't, and if one layout doesn't work for me, it often stays half empty and I try to find a better way to use it next month. Journaling isn't always fun either, even though we always like to say that it is, so taking a little break is totally normal. But back to my tracker spread. I chose to paint this pastel purple cloud painting on the right side of the spread. I wanted to paint the clouds pretty high to get a different perspective on the painting. I also tried to make the upper part of the sky darker so the ombre effect would be more noticeable. I think the colors I chose for the clouds also ended up being a little bit darker than I anticipated, especially on the bottom of the page. Sometimes you just don't realize these things until later on when you turn your filming lights and cameras off. I know I've talked about a similar thing before in one of my videos, but after getting a couple of comments saying that I shouldn't be so hard on myself, even though I don't think I am at all, I feel like it's important to remind people how, first of all, art is subjective, and second of all, you not loving every piece of art you make is completely normal. Every single artist absolutely hates something they've made, and many art pieces just in general evoke some kind of memories and emotions people on social media won't see at all because they only see the end product. Sometimes I force myself to do art, and I might always remember that when I'm looking at that piece, or something I made during a time when I was more sad makes me not want to even look at that painting. Almost everything people share on social media is somehow made more beautiful and more interesting because we want to share the best moments and focus on the positive things. While I never want to be overly negative, I think it's also very important not to paint this false image of doing art and being an artist or forcing people to be positive and only loving their art. Also, if you look up to an artist or there's a person who has done art longer than you who says something a little bit more negative about their creation, it doesn't make your art extra bad. We are all at different points of our art journey and they really can't be compared like that. I don't know exactly what I was trying to say, but I will stay being honest and telling you when something didn't turn out perfect, as I will also continue telling you when I absolutely love one page. I think if you want to do art, the fact that you're even here is such a big step, and I have the biggest faith in you, and you will get wherever you want to with practice, patience, and kindness towards yourself and others, but also with making mistakes and tons of imperfect pieces you probably absolutely hate at the time. I have many unfinished paintings and pieces I created in the beginning of my art journey, and I remember feeling bad about not being able to finish them how I wanted, and they look absolutely nothing like the things I paint now, but I'm able to look at them now and be happy that I started. I again painted the crescent moon on the sky using my circle template tool to help me. After painting some stars in the background, I started making the layout itself. First, I wrote trackers in the upper left corner, and then I started making the small calendars for my habit tracker. This spread was a huge struggle because I desperately wanted to add some extra details and color to the spread, but I just didn't know what. I often resort to craft paper, but the color just didn't go well with this pastel purple. I even tried black paper, but I think that was way too dark for this page too. I did find a way to add color, but I only made that later after I made both of the trackers. I again made this line chart mood tracker. I love how low effort way of tracking my mood and sleep it is. I've noticed in the past that the more effort it takes for me to track something, the more likely I'm just going to ditch that and not fill it up, so this works for me perfectly, just drawing one dot for each day and maybe even connect the dots if I feel like that. So like I said, I ended up adding some color to the spread, and I decided to make the calendar grids over and paint the backgrounds with the same purple color. I decided to make them in separate pieces of paper just in case I absolutely hated it, but I didn't, so I just glued the new grids on top. By the way, as my notebook, I'm using this A5 Archer and Olive notebook, and if you would like to get a similar one or something else from them, I have a 10% off discount code Tiina10 for you, and I also get a small commission at the same time, so you can also support me as a creator while shopping. The discount code and affiliate link are always listed in the description of my video, so you can also use it later or whenever you feel like getting something new for yourself. The spread definitely isn't my favorite due to the colors, it's just so different from what I normally would use. But let's go to the next one, or next ones. The next spread is a Dutch door spread where I will on one side include a content planner and on one side I will make my memory spread. I started off by cutting the edges of the middle page. I will do my paintings on the edges of the spread, so whenever you look at the memory spread or content planner you will see the painting. This turned out to be one of my favorite spreads I made, and I love how the memory spread also has some more decorations this time. I decided to paint a more darker blue sky this time, and I wanted to also create a bigger gradient from lighter blue to darker. I painted one page at a time, and I think the gradient is still pretty even. I first made the bottom with lighter color and then added darker on the top. Then I took the lighter color again and blended the colors together by dragging the pastel blue on top of the top part. I left the clouds at the bottom uncolored as in my previous paintings, but I also painted some more on top of the blue sky once I was done with the background. And this is when I noticed all that blue paint had stained the paper from the other side too. I tried to wipe some of that out with a tissue and some water, but at the end I just ended up gluing a piece of paper on top of that spot where I got most of the paint. Luckily the tape helped me a lot, so again I highly recommend doing this to avoid some really bad mistakes. I painted the other side as well and then just started working on the white clouds on top of the blue sky. Obviously, when you add white gouache paints on top of a darker color, it easily takes some of that color underneath and mixes it to the white paint. Basically, the only thing is to just wait until it fully dries and painting on top of it again to create a more even base. I ended up adding a lot of layers over and over again, mainly because I first tried to use a different technique, but in the end I just did the same thing as with my other paintings and made the bottom darker and top lighter. These clouds are definitely more in the background, and if they aren't perfect, don't worry, I doubt you even notice any imperfections when you're done and using the spread. I also didn't want to add too many clouds in the spread. I wanted the top of the spread just to be the darker night sky with some stars. So the first spread on the left side is the content planner, and I usually like to spend more time on it and decorate it more than my memory spread, so I decided to paint some of the clouds on the bottom of the page, also on top of the white area of the page and content planner, and leave the crisp edges to the memory spread on the right side. So I painted the clouds again with the same technique, but I definitely struggled a bit with trying to get the clouds to pop off the page since the lightest part of the cloud was almost the same shade as the paper itself. I also noticed how against the white paper my white gouache looked almost yellowish or greenish. If you didn't know, there are different kinds of white gouache. Titanium white is, I guess, mostly used by itself because mixed with other colors it can sometimes dull the pigment, and maybe instead for mixing you might want to try zinc white that keeps the other colors vibrant and pigmented. At least Winsor & Newton has great white gouache tubes for this. I didn't use them this time, and I think that's why the color might look a bit more yellow even though I used it straight from the tube. I don't know. After I was done with the fluffy cute clouds in the background, I made a sketch and painted on top of the corner of the first spread and tried to make the picture continue from the sides of the page below it. I probably forgot to film when I was adding the stars, but I think by now you probably know how I did it. I wrote content planner with the same black lettering on the left side. The layout I used for this spread is pretty much the same as I used last time, since I think this is the perfect compact and useful layout for this purpose. So if you don't know what a content planner is or how I'm using it, I always use it to track and plan my social media posts, so basically it is some kind of work spread for me. You could also just use it for work or any bigger projects if you don't need a social media planner. So on the big calendar on the right side, I always write all my upcoming Instagram posts I'm uploading throughout the month. Different ways of planning work for different people, obviously, but I always like to create my schedule, take all my photos and edit them before the month starts, and I write all the posts down in the calendar. I also use this app called Preview on my phone where I then add all the photos in the order I'm planning on posting them after creating the schedule in my bullet journal. Below the calendar, I made a box for to-dos with different sections for overall tasks and also weekly ones. I actually really like having a place to write down different tasks for each week. Sometimes you just don't have a specific date or deadline to get things done. On the left side of the page, I added a big box for tracking my Instagram posts. I don't necessarily use it much anymore, but it's sometimes useful. I marked down the post, the date when it was posted, and the number of likes after 24 hours. But like I said, I don't use it that often anymore, and especially I often leave the likes out just because I don't really care about it that much anymore. I also made the small sections for followers and notes on the left side, making the transparent blue lines again. In the end, I really love how this spread turned out, and I really love the balance and all the fun colors and the painting. Now we are going to the next spread where I will create the memory spread I've done for several months in a row now. As always, this is inspired by Viv from Monday Morning Design, and I will link her Instagram account in the caption of this video. I actually first completely forgot to even add this spread to my list of spreads to create and sketch, but I'm happy I found a place for it eventually. I usually don't even have any drawings or paintings on that spread, so it's fun to have a more decorative look on the layout this time. So the spread is for memory keeping and drawing and writing down something each day of the month. I love the memories aspect of bullet journaling, and it's one of my favorite things, so this spread is really perfect for me. I wrote memories with the same black letters on the middle of the page along with February below. I sketched 28 different sized and shaped rectangles across the spread and outlined them without a ruler with different sized and colored fine liners. I even added some grid paper pieces and painted some with the transparent blue paint. I really love how whimsical and fun this spread looks with all the different colors and perfectly wonky lines and patterns. I lastly just added some of this beautiful melodious purple grid washi I've used with my paintings to the boxes too. But that's it for my memory spread, and now we will quickly make my playlist before going to the last spread of the video. As you can see, I already created this dramatic cloud painting here, and I'm thinking about uploading the process video separately as a tutorial video if you would like to see it, but please tell me if you would. On the left page, I added my usual playlist spread with my printed album covers of my favorite songs of the last month. I made a little border to the page with a pink marker and wrote playlist as a header. I then glued all the album cover pictures and made a small wonky line frame for each one. I took my Muji Gel Pen and wrote the songs and artists to the page. I really like the minimalistic look of this page, and I think it looks nice next to the colorful and detailed big painting. And now we can get to my last spread of the video, which is obviously my first weekly spread as always. I tried to do some interesting gradients with the sky in these paintings, but it didn't really work out like I wanted to, and the colors just weren't it for me. I let the base colors dry and added some pastel purple on top, but as always, the color above wasn't covered with the first layer of paint, and I had to take my hairdryer and fully dry the purple layers one by one to get a fully opaque layer. While I was adding the purple color, I noticed how much I actually like the darker blue on the top, so I ended up creating a gradient for the sky from purple to dark blue. The gradient also didn't turn out perfect, but I still really love the color combo. This layout itself is really simple. There's 4 horizontal boxes on each page, and on the left side, the upper box is the painting, and on the right page, the lowest box has the painting. I tried to make similar paintings but choose different angles for both so they would still be different enough from each other. I worked on the upper painting first, and I really like this one. I made the clouds coming more from the upper right corner, and I think it looks great to have more clouds in the frame like this. I wanted to make the shadows really light and soft this time after not really loving the previous purple painting, and I think this fit the colors really well. By the way, I know my video is getting longer and longer with each Plan With Me video. I've heard many of you like the longer videos too, so I don't know, I just really hope you get to relax for half an hour watching me paint some pretty skies, and you also get to forget all your stressful plans and tasks for a moment. It's really hard for me to edit my videos to be shorter or faster in speed, so these 30-minute videos have been perfect for me. For the painting on the right side, I painted some clouds to the bottom and added a little moon in the background. I think it's great I chose a theme with a color scheme like this since it really grew on me. I don't think I will go for pinks and purples too much in the future though, but I like it here. The last step was making the simple boxes for each day of the week with my fine liner. I also wrote the days of the week on the edges of the boxes, and that's it for my first weekly spread. I will of course also upload my weekly spreads video later where I will create all the rest of the weekly spreads for February. But now we are soon getting to the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed watching this video and seeing me create something completely different and something that definitely was out of my comfort zone. I'm just quickly going to flip through all the pages I made in this video. If you like this one, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, leave a thumbs up and leave a cloud emoji in the comments if you watch until the end. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for watching and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye bye!